What's up, guys? So this is our 11th tutorial on Xamarin.Android, and we are actually in the middle of creating a sliding tab layout navigation system, much like the one in the Google Play Store. And if you're just tuning in, we've already done one tutorial, the Xamarin.Android tutorial number 10, in which we created the linear layout, basically our custom linear layout that's going to represent each tab, and it's going to be a tab strip that holds all of these tabs. So if you're just tuning in, I suggest go back one and look how we did that, and then come back here and we'll be all be on the same page, and we can continue from there. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to make the actual scroll view that's going to hold the tab strip, okay? And that's another big class that we need to get started on, okay? So in this tutorial is going to be a little longer, a little more lengthy, but I think what we're going to pull out of it is some really cool stuff that we're going to be able to work on and make up some really cool applications with this, you know. So let's get started on this, okay? So let's go ahead and go to your sliding tab scroll view class, and we will start implementing this, okay? So the first thing we want to do is we want to, well, you know what? We have a few variables that, once again, this project is going to be supplied in the video. Just go to the bottom and download the project file. So if you want to copy and paste this, or if you want to type it all out, feel free. But this is going to be just some global variables that we're going to have for this class, okay? And then the first thing you want to notice, or you're going to want to notice, is the view pager. It doesn't recognize it, and Visual Studio doesn't want to import anything. So we're like, oh, what the heck, you know? We need that view pager. It's a very important class. And the way it is, it's a component that's supplied in the support library that Android has written, or Google has written. So the way to get that is pretty simple. Just go over here and right click on component and go to get more components. And then in here we can just type in support, and we'll see Android support library version 4. Click on that and add it to your app. You'll see here at the bottom that it's downloading it, and then now it's installing. So it takes care of a lot of things for you. Really a nice feature, and it's been installed. So we go in here and we have it now, and it even added a reference for us automatically as well. So now all we need to do is just right click, resolve, and then import that library. Okay, so there we are there, all good to go. Okay, so now we need to just start implementing the constructors that are going to be called when this view is instantiated. Okay, so we want to have a one parameter constructor that takes the context, and in turn it calls its two parameter constructor, which we will make right now. Okay, and sliding tab scroll view. This two parameter constructor will take a context and an I attribute set, and this one will call its its third parameter constructor. Okay, and we want to import that, the I attribute set interface, through the Android.utility namespace. And the last thing we want to do with the constructors is we want to implement that third one. Okay, so it takes a context, takes an attribute set, and it takes a default style. And then we want to call our base class for this, okay? Default style. Okay. And we should get an error here because we have not yet, doesn't know what the base is because we haven't inherited from anything. And we're going to inherit view from a horizontal scroll view. Okay, and that's all this is going to be, a custom horizontal scroll view class. Okay, so in our third parameter constructor, we're going to do some implementation, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to disable the scroll bar, because it'll be weird to see a scroll bar in our tab layout, right? So we're going to disable it. So the way to do that is scroll bar enabled property, and we want to set that to false, and make sure the tab strips fill the view. Okay, so which is what we're going to do right now. So we have another property called fill viewport, and we want to set that to true, meaning we want it to fill the entire view that is within. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to set the background color of the entire tab strip. So we want to set it to a gray, like you guys saw in the example that I showed you in this earlier tutorial. And the way we do that is using the graphics library, and we do give it some values, E5, 0x E5, okay? And that's basically a gray color. And we'll just make a note of that. Next we have a title offset value, okay? And we want to set that to, we have a global constant variable, and these are also variables that you guys can play around with and see what they do. And it's interesting to do that sometimes, just kind of keep running it and changing values, and you see, and you can make things your own and just say, oh, I like this, and at a higher value or a lower value. So, you know, just once again, just things that, these are numbers that you guys can just play around with up here at the top. Okay, change the font to make it a higher font and more padding, and you know, just stuff like that. And the next thing we want to do is we want to initialize and instantiate an object of sliding tab strip type, okay, which is the class that we worked on in the last tutorial. So this class is all finished up. So here's where we want to instantiate it. And here we want to actually add it and then give it some parameters. So params, we want it to match the parent and match the parent horizontally and vertically. So height and width we wanted to match. Okay, and that is it for our constructors. And the next thing we want to do is we're going to want to add some properties, okay, mainly some setters. And this one's going to take a tab colorizer, and it's going to set a custom tab colorizer. Okay, so if the user wants to supply their own custom tab colorizer, this is where they can do it. And remember, this we've already implemented. We've already implemented this custom tab colorizer over here. And the way to do that is pretty simple. If you're using Visual Studio, just go to definition, and it'll show you right here. So call it here, and then it says, okay, so here's the value. So here's the custom tab colorizer that we use. Okay. And then in the onDraw method, remember, it checks to see if it's null, which it won't be if it's set. And if it's not null, then it gives a value to this tab colorizer, which we use down here at the bottom in the onDraw method. Okay. But if it isn't, if we don't set it, then it just uses its default value. All right. So that's kind of a little, just kind of a get our orientation, because sometimes it's like, man, I get lost in like the code. I'm just, you know, what's this doing? Where's this going? You know, what's this for? And you know, I don't know about you guys, but when stuff gets long and I start kind of getting lost in it, so I like to kind of follow and stay orientated. You know what's going on, because if not, I just get lost. So the selected indicator color is going to be the selected indicator colors that we'll use the property for, and same exact thing. It's gonna set this. And the tab layout is going to be set, and then it's going to set in the tab strip, it's going to go set it here. Okay, so this guy will get called, and then it'll set default tab colorizer, which is, remember, over here, and then it sets it right here, which gets this value. So this sets this value, and then this is used over in the onDraw method. Okay, so onDraw is over here, and it's the indicator colors, and it gets the get divider color, you know, and set divider color, or get divider color, and then get indicator color. It's all used in this onDraw method. Okay, so just kind of gotta give you guys a reference of, you know, it's all mapping together, you know. And we want to do the same exact thing for the divider colors. Okay, so let's do set tab strip divider colors equals value. Alrighty, So just some properties that we will allow the programmer to set colors for. All right, and you don't have to do this here because there's already default values for this. But if you don't, or if you do, then it's going to set some more colors over here in the scroll tab view class. Okay, whatever class instantiates this class, it'll be able to set them because they're all public. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we would like to view pager, and then it's going to be an I on page change listener. So if the programmer, because the reason why I keep saying programmer is we're writing an API. So I mean, essentially, we're not using any kind of library. So when this library is used, they can be able to manipulate stuff. Because I mean, have you ever been like in a situation where you're just, oh man, I wish this library had this method that I can just set the color here or set the height and the width here, but it won't let me. It's so annoying. I have to make my own method, and you kind of have to come up with this hack. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We kind of want to let the programmer have some leeway, I guess, and be able to set things themselves and stuff like that. Okay, so if it's just you using it, then you gave yourself more options. But if you have ever take this and reference it out and give it to a buddy or something, and a fellow programmer, here, use this library I wrote, then they're gonna keep bothering you and say, hey man, I can't use this page listener. I want to make my own, So this is what you would need to do in this case. So that's what we're doing here. And what we want to do is we want to set the value. Okay. And this is another value that doesn't have to be initialized. And we'll check to see if it's not null. If it's not null, we'll call its implemented methods that the programmer must have set. Because if it's not null, then they must have set a custom on-page change listener. The next thing we want to do is we want to have a view pager property that will set the view pager. We're going to have some logic in here. The first thing we want to do is when the view pager gets set, we need to remove all the views from tab strip because we need to reinitialize it essentially. So this is the first thing that we would want to do. And view pager equals value. Okay. And then if value, see right now value, because of view pager value, it knows that value is of type view pager. Okay, so if you look right there at the bottom of the intelligence sense, value is of type view pager, so we can use all of view pager's methods and properties. Okay, so if it's not null, if you don't want to do anything, if it is null, of course, we want to basically set up some events. Okay, and it just made a property or a method right here. And then so in the way you would do it in Java is you would use you would use a listener, and you would create a listener, a custom listener, and you would implement these methods, and you would do something like values.set on page change listener, and then you would give it my listener or whatever, and then you would implement it there. And you can still do that in Xamarin and C#, totally. But here's a quick way to do it. It's kind of clean. It's just a nice way to do it. Essentially, when this happens, call this method. So it's using events, which we've already gone over, and I really like events. So yeah, so that's just want to show you guys this. So we want to do a page scrolled event. Oops, and then we'll let Visual Studio generate that for us. And the last event that we want to subscribe to is the page scrolled. So these ones are all like, when the page is scrolled and when the page is scrolled. So this one happens when the page is scrolled. This one's done when the page is selected, and this one's when the states change between the page. So as the user is swiping through the pages, these events are getting called constantly, and these events are really important, and because they'll call this change listener, which the programmer supplies. They'll call their methods, and they're really important. So, and you'll see here in a moment what we're going to do with it. So here's page scrolled. So here's when the actual page, because this is a view pager, so when the actual page is scrolled, this thing is going to get called. Okay. So what do we want to do when the page gets scrolled? We want to scroll the view, right? And we want to, that little indicator, the colored indicator, we want to scroll that as well. And I'll show you how that's done in a second, okay? So tab count, we'll call it. So how many tabs are in here? And we can get that from the count of tab strip, because remember we have a reference to it. We've created a tab strip, so how many children in it? And that's done in another that'll be done in another method that populates all the tabs. Okay, so at this point we know how many tabs are in here. All right, and what we want to do next is we first want to check to see a few conditions, because we don't want to do this for no reason. So we want to do if tab count equals 0, or if e.position is less than 0, or the position it's scrolling to is e.position, or if e.position is greater than or equal to cap count. Okay, so basically these are like, if there's no tabs, if there's, if the position is trying to go left too much, if it's trying to go right too much, then we don't want to do anything, If any of these conditions apply, return. No need to scroll. All right. So the next thing we'll do is very important. We'll call the onViewerPageChanged method from the tab strip, and we'll give it the position that the user is trying to scroll to, the tab, and the position offset. So, the offset that they're scrolling to. So how far they are from where they are and where they're going is the offset. Okay, so, and this method is very important. Okay, so, and I'll show you here why in a moment, but let me finish this real quick. So we want to get the view. So get child at, and if you guys were in the tutorial before this, you guys are probably like, oh, okay, I know what this method, this is what we did in the onDraw method, and this is kind of like the onDraw. This is the start of the onDraw, the very beginning of it. So this is kind of the initialization of getting ready to draw everything again because the user is scrolling. Okay, so the selected titles, so the tab that we are on, if it's not null, check to see if it's not null. If it's not null, then we want to do mPosition dot times the selected child. Sorry, I went blank for a second. And if it is 0, or I'm sorry, if it is null, then 0. Okay, so the extra offset is basically the amount that it might need to scroll more, and it's kind of more of like a fine-tuning. Okay, so we want to create a method called scroll to tab. All right, so we want to scroll to the correct tab, and with that we want to give it the position that it's trying to scroll to and the extra offset that it needs to scroll to, and we want to generate this because we have not generated that yet. All right, the last thing we want to do in this method is we want to check to see if the user, the programmer, has given us their own custom page change listener. And if it's not null, then they must have given us a change listener. And so we want to call their custom, because that means they've implemented their custom page change listener, and they've implemented a page scrolled method where they want to do extra stuff, like maybe they want to prompt the user to do something. Maybe they want to, who knows what they want to do, but it's never going to happen unless we call it over here. So this will always get called, and if there's a custom view change, also call their custom implementation and give it the correct values. So that is what we want to do here. Offset in pixels. And that's all that's doing here, And if you wanted to screw with your buddy, do like position +2 and give him a wrong parameter, and they'll be really pissed at you. So yeah, but just saying. All right, so that method is all done and complete. And let's move this guy down here because I like to keep all the events that are all the methods that are tied to some all the events right by each other. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we have a scroll state global variable, and we want to set that to the scroll state, and I'll show you why in a minute. And then the same thing we want to do here is we want to check to see if it's not null. So has the programmer supplied their own custom? If so, then we want to call their implementation of scroll state changed. Okay, and give it the correct parameter. And that's all we need to do in that method. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is page selected. This one's actually like the page has been selected that the user wants to scroll to. And first we'll check to see, we'll say if m scroll state equals viewer page dot scroll state idle. So if it's idling, so if the user is done selecting. So this might get called many times, but you want to make sure that they're actually, it's idled, so they've selected this page, you know, because they might be scrolling really fast and it'll keep getting called and called, but you only want to call it when it's done, when the user has finished, you know, scrolling. So here in this case we want to call on viewer page changed, this very important method that I keep talking about. That way, we've already implemented this method, by the way, if you don't remember, and I'll show you why. I mentioned that it's important in the last tutorial, but we haven't yet implemented it or actually called it. So here's where we're calling it, and I want to make sure that you guys see. And then all we want to do is scroll to tab, and then there's no offset because the page has been selected, so they're no longer scrolling, so there's no offset anymore, but the position still needs to be settled. Okay, and here the last thing, of course, is we want to see if the programmer has supplied their own custom method, and the one we want to call is the method that we're in currently on page selected, and there it is. Okay, so before I go any further, let me show you this. Okay, so little breakdown. The page is being scrolled, so the user has swiped the page and it's being scrolled. Okay, and basically let me pull this up for a second and just to show you guys and what's going on. So the page has been scrolled right here. The method has been called, and when that happens, the page scroll is fired, and this guy mTabScript on viewer page changed. Let's go to that definition. This thing gets called, which is right here. So it sets this position. It has there's a global variable. The position gets set, the offset gets set, and then this dot invalidate gets we call that. And what this thing does is basically says, hey, invalidates the whole view. And what does that mean? So the whole view gets validated, and basically what it says is, oh wait, my view's validated. I have to redraw it all over again. And that's key, because it goes into here now and redraws the whole view with these correct parameters. So if this wasn't called, it wouldn't get called correctly, and it would pretty much be broken. And so this guy is really key, which makes this key, which makes this key. Okay, so that's basically forcing the tab strip to redraw itself, so the indicator moves when the on draw. Remember, like with the correct parameters, because as this changes, this will keep getting called, and it'll keep moving, and it'll give you that animation effect. Okay, and the same thing's happening in the scroll state changed are selected. It gets called yet again, and because this is called many times in one scroll. It's called many times, which means this is called many times, which means the on draw method is called many times. So it gives you that really smooth animation effect. Okay, and that's what's going on there. Just a little breakdown of that. Next, let's go ahead and we want to implement the scroll to tab method. Okay, this is where we actually scroll to the tab. The horizontal scroll view is we're scrolling to it. Okay, so we want to do tab count, and we can get the tab count from the tab strip once again. Okay, and we want to check the certain parameters. We want to make sure that we're not going to scroll for no reason. So if it's 0, or if the let's change this p to tab index. Okay, if tab index is less than 0, or if tab index is greater than equal to the entire amount of tabs, then we don't want to go any further. Okay, we don't want to scroll. So we will say no need to go further. Don't scroll. And at that point we'll return. Okay. But if we do want to scroll, then we want to get the actual view, that we are scrolling to. So the actual tab, get child at the tab index. Okay. And we want to make sure that the tab is not null, because if it is, we don't want to do anything with it. So we want to get the scroll amount x. So how much do we need to scroll in the horizontal direction, okay? And the way we figure that out is we want to get the left coordinate relative to its parent times or plus the extra offset, okay? Which is calculated, which is passed in right here, remember? Okay. And then also, so if tab index is greater than 0, or the extra offset is greater than 0, then we want to account for that. That means that we need to basically account for that in the scroll amount, okay? Which is the title offset, which is specified up here at the top, which is a value that we can play around with, you know, if we want to. It's just a constant global variable. So, all right. And then we want to use the actual like method that's built in. So we do this. I like to do this because then we can differentiate between methods that we've created and methods that are already built in. So this dot scroll to, we can call, of course, any method, but I like to use this kind of a convention that I like to use. So when I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, that must be a built-in method. So we want to scroll to the scroll amount x in the x direction, and then 0 in the y direction, of course, because we don't want to go up and down. We just want to go left and right. And there we have it. That's the scroll to tab method, okay? And the next method that we want to implement is actually we want to override it, and it's on attached to window. And this is called pretty much like as soon as the view is attached, okay? So this one's pretty simple. We just want to make sure that the view pager is not null, and if it is not null, we want to actually scroll to the current item, and there's no offset, of course. So this is kind of just the initialization of it, you know. Scroll to the current item, and then just, you know, get ready to scroll. So this is basically kind of like initialization of it. So think of it as that. And the next thing we want to do is we want to populate a tab strip. We want to populate the tab strip. So we're actually gonna, here is where we actually populate tabs onto the tab strip, okay? So this method is obviously very important. Pager adapter. And we want to get the pager adapter from the adapter, which we will set. We're going to set the mView adapter. We're going to set that inside of the actual fragment. Okay, once we create the fragment, that's going to be set. So then we're going to get a reference to it here. All right, the adapter is actually going to be a custom class that we're going to override. All right, so let's first populate all of the tabs, and here's the reason why we got the adapter reference, to get the count, because if there's 10 if there's 10 pages, then we want to make 10 tabs, right? Because every tab needs a page, so there's you know, there's 7 tabs, 7 pages. There's 7 pages. Well, we need to make 7 tabs that correspond to each one. Okay, so that's why we want to do for the adapter.count, because the adapter.count is what holds all the pages. Okay, so first let's make a text view. We'll call it tab view, and we'll do something. We'll call a method called create tab view. Give it a context, and we do not yet have a method called that, so we need to generate it, and we will create that here shortly. And we'll come back to the text. So for right now, we'll just do i2string. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for all the text views, for all the tabs. But we're going to come back and we're actually going to set headers. But we need to do that first. We need to create the custom pager adapter, which we won't do right now, okay? Because we just want to stay on track. But we will come back to that, I promise. We want to set the text color, okay? Which is pretty simple. Let's just set it to black. And here we want to set the tag, and this is very, very important. The tag is basically almost every object has a tag, and a tag is of object value. So it's basically used to stick whatever you want in it. You know, you stick that, you can stick string, whatever. It just holds an object, okay? So we want to stick the index to which this tab is associated with. So right now this is the 0 index, then it goes again, the first index, second index. So we want to do that so when we click on the tab, we know what page, the corresponding page, the correct page to go to, okay? And I'll show you that right now. So we want to register a click method with this, and this click method will fire whenever it's clicked, okay? And the last thing we want to do is we want to actually add this view to the tab strip, okay? So let me show you this, guys. Okay, so here basically is what's going on is like, notice that when you actually click on a tab, that it takes you to that corresponding page, right? Which is what you want. Okay, and that's done because of the fact that we have a click method registered, and it knows what page to go to because we have a tag to it. We tagged it. You know what I mean? So the way we do that is we just set the, first we need to cast it. The sender right now in this case is an object, but it's really of type text view, and we know that because of right here. Okay, so let's use that to our advantage, and we're gonna cast it to a text view. So we'll say we'll call this click tab. We'll do a downcast to a to the sender. Okay, so we're saying, hey compiler, you know, don't worry, we know that it's a text view. Alrighty, and the next thing we want to do is we want to get the position of, so we'll say page to scroll to. Okay, that's what we'll call it. Cast it to an int, and then we'll do click tab dot tag, because tag's an object, but we're saying, hey, don't worry, we know it's an integer. We know it's an integer because of this I value, right? And then now we just do the view pager dot current item. We set the current item to the page to scroll to. And that's what's nice about this. The view pager, once you set the current item, it does the rest for you. So as soon as you hit that, it scrolls. And then, because what this does is call the page scroll state changed, okay? And it calls all these methods, which in turn calls the onDraw method, and which in turn does all that stuff for us, okay? So just make sure that's set, and then everything will also be taken care of for you, as long as you implement this stuff correctly. All right? So pretty cool. We don't have to, you know, have no listener for it. We just register a click event, and this little trick helps us out pretty good, because there's only one parameter that we really need to worry about, and that's what page to scroll to. That's all it is. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to go to our create default tab view, and that's what we're going to implement next. We're going to actually create a tab view via code. Okay, so let's make a text, or I'm sorry, a text view. Let's make a text view. We will do new text view, and I'm going to change this context to a lowercase c. It auto-generated it for us, so it gave us a weird parameter, as always. Get that out of the way. All right, so then we're just going to set a few properties, like its gravity. We want to set to use gravity flags, and we want to center it. So basically, this is the text alignment that we want to set it as, and we want to set the text size to. We want to use a complex unit type, okay, SP. So it's going to be an SP unit, and we already have a constant variable for that, okay? And that's not the right one. It's actually text size underscore SP. All right, that should be, yeah, okay. And then next thing we want to do is we want to set a typeface to it, okay? And all a typeface is a way we can give it a, let's do Android graphics. This is how we can actually just bold it. So we'll do default bold, okay? The next thing we want to do is we want to first check to see the version of the SDK that this device is running. So SDK, and if it's greater than Honeycomb, which we can get the build version code, build version quotes. So that keeps track of all the build versions. This keeps track of the SDK. So if it's greater than Honeycomb, it's running something higher or equal to Honeycomb. Then we want to do a particular thing, and what we want to do is you want to get the out value, typed value, and we'll use the context theme resolve attribute, Android resource attribute, selectable item background, out value. This will be false. And then with that, we now have an out value. Okay, so we can set the background resource, and we can use the resource ID that's given to the out value. Okay. Also, what we want to check is we just want to check to see if it is SDK int greater than ice cream sandwich. So ice cream sandwich. Oh, that sounds so good right now. An ice cream sandwich. Okay, text to view, and set all caps to true. All right, so just something to correlate with the different APIs. Okay. Next, we want to get the padding, which we can do from tab view padding, and it's in DIP unit. And what we can do is we want to get the density so that remains, you know, in scale for all the different densities of phones. And set padding. There's not really any, I don't know of any good way to set the padding like easily, so you just got to do it for left, top, right, and bottom, just like that. You know, if there's an easier way, maybe put it in the comments or something, but that's what I usually do. So yeah. And we're getting an error, and that's because I didn't initialize it. And there we go. Okay, so the last thing we want to do is we want to return that text view. That should be all good to go. And let's see, are we missing anything? I don't think so. I think we're good. So this sliding tab scroll view is all good to go. If I miss something, I'll make sure to mention in the next tutorial, but I think we're pretty good to go on this. So these are the two main classes, and what I want to do in the next tutorial is add the dialog fragment, add the activity, and the main activity, and I will supply the resources. I'm not going to go over the resources. I'm just going to supply them because they're pretty self-explanatory and they're not really too trivial. This is the main bulk of it, and that'll give me some time to maybe kind of go over what's exactly going on and just the flow of the whole program, where it starts and where it ends and what's getting called, because sometimes that stuff confuses the hell out of me, and once I kind of break it down, everything kind of just makes more sense. So hopefully doing that for you guys, for some of you guys that are like kind of like, what's the heck's going on, I can you know, kind of clarify that a little bit. So all right, so the next tutorial we should be able to finish this navigation, and we should have a working clean navigation like the ones that I've been showing you. Okay, all right, thanks guys for watching, stay tuned.